Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Free Bridge Podcast with your host, Brian Castillo. It's good to be back. I've had a little bit of a break. I was on vacation. I went to Denver. But anyways, I'm back now, and I finally got a guest on my show. I have been dying to get on my show. I'm so happy to have you. So without further ado, I have my guest on my show. His name is Josh Jones. Josh, if you want to say hello to everybody, go ahead.
Hello, everybody.
Hello, world of the podcast listeners.
Hello, how's it going out there?
They can't answer us back. Imagine they start calling and they're like, "Hey, we suck. I hate you guys."
No instant feedback, please.
Yeah, please no.
No streaming responses.
So, if this is your first time listening to the podcast, if you want to show any support, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. I'm also got an announcement to make. I'm going to start pretty much uploading the content on iTunes so that you can get all my podcasts there. It's going to be all raw information, or like just the whole raw audio or whatever. But essentially, what I'm doing right now is I'm putting everything on YouTube so that people can listen to it. And I'm going to start doing clips and whatnot, just like I did with the last video. But anyways, back to the podcast and my guest. So Josh, how did I meet you again? We work together, right?
Yeah, we work together.
He's my boss. He can fire me if he wants to. So all that other shit I said in that other podcast, please don't listen to it so you don't fire me. But no, but I was I had a conversation with you. Actually, I've had a few conversations with you at work, and sometimes they like the first few of them were just talking about sales, and I was a manager. He has the same position that I had, but I stepped down because I fucking hate it and it was terrible. He loves it and he's doing a great job. I mean, you're killing it. And I remember because when we first started, I was not in a good place. I was pretty angry at the world, and Josh, his outlook on life is completely different from the way my outlook is. I fucking hate everybody. Anybody that looks at me wrong, I just like, fuck you, I don't like you. But you're like, no, man, everything is different. You're looking at it the wrong way. And we'd have conversations at work in the break room. Like, I'm sitting there, like, having my food, and I don't want to talk to anybody. I actually legitimately, for like the first 3 months, I don't think I talked to anybody at work.
Yeah, that's
unless
true.
I had to.
Yep, that's very true. I think, you definitely walked through the first couple of months with your arms crossed.
Hell yeah. Arms crossed, man. I had a fucking sword and shield and everything. I hated it. But now, like, it's not just you, but, like, there's a lot of people that we work with that have a very interesting look on life.
Definitely.
Definitely.
I think that when you first came on, when you first started in sales, it was a jaded feeling. And I think most of our conversations just kind of dealt with outlook on life.
Yeah.
And I think one of the main points that I used to refer back to is just how you were describing the world that you thought that you were in, how sales was, how new environments were.
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't know.
Well, I don't want to give too much information as to what happened out there in St. Louis with my coworkers, but I saw some pretty messed up crap. I saw some fucked up shit out there, and some people, it's weird when I don't even know how to describe it, because I like to take it back all the way to when I played football, and I was on a team and I was enjoying it and I was getting better at it, and my senior year, I think that's when politics came in, and they're like, well, you can't start because the chief of police son or whatever is the running back, and he needs to get the playing time because they want to see their kid play. And I was like, what? Are you fucking kidding me? So, like, because I may be better than this person, you're going to play that kid because his dad? And that was my first lesson to what the world is like.
Unfair.
It's bullshit. Yeah, it fucking sucks. So
but unfair doesn't mean I don't know.
It doesn't have to be the end. No, because and what I ended up,
or unenjoyable.
Yeah.
It's how you decide. Look at Gandhi. He's never had a Big Mac, and I feel glad that I have.
Oh yeah, Big Macs are fucking delicious. No, but On the football team, yeah, I quit the team, and I was heartbroken because I liked football. But I ended up joining another football league in New Jersey, of all places. Ugh. But it turned out to be amazing. So I was like, look, I found a team that I can play on, and now I finally get to live out these experiences I've always wanted to have. And then the same thing in St. Louis, and I don't know. I mean, I don't want to say too much, but when you go into management, like that was it for me. I was like, yes, I'm going to be a manager. This is what I've always wanted to do.
Why?
Because I guess I just drank the Kool-Aid, and because like the company is saying, Brian, we see a lot of potential in you. We think you're a good asset to the company in general, and we know that you can bring in a lot of good things for us. So we want to see you progress and become a manager. And I've been messing with the idea. I think I worked for the company 2 years at the time, and I finally said, you know what, I want to do it. And the manager told me the best way to do it is you got to be relocatable. And I'm like, I don't want to live in New York anymore. It's cost $1 million just to fucking breathe the air. So I would love to get out of New York. And when I went to St. Louis, that he's like, that's where you should go. I had the chance to go to Chicago, but I guess I missed the boat on that, and I ended up going to St. Louis. So then I became manager, and then all the shit hit the fan, and I saw the politicking behind closed doors or whatever, and it was weird. I didn't enjoy it. Now,
Did you, just out of curiosity, we
Yeah.
just got done watching Westworld. We just got done watching
Westworld.
yeah, Westworld.
Uh-huh.
And I've been making fun of just different situations where it's this world or that world, Emmaus world, Whitehall world, work world, and it's all these different roles that you step in. With all the different places that you've bounced around, do you have a St. Louis world? Like when you get there,
Yeah.
do you act differently? Is it a different environment when you step into your work world as it is your personal world?
Okay, so that's a good. You know what? So like, obviously, when you're hanging out with your friends, you act a certain way, and when you go to work, you act a certain way. And when you're even hanging out with like with my in-laws, when I hang out with my in-laws, yeah, I'm a little more reserved. I don't talk too much. I still make jokes once I get comfortable and whatnot. When I went to St. Louis, I was still me. I was still acting like me, but the world around me it's like the world now was taking that route where they were acting different because
Forcing you to do something that you didn't because you had to comply. You were in different kind of levels of abilities.
yeah, like oh my god, and and that's where I talk about like the racism and whatnot because it's different out there. Like they point it out to you. They point out like, listen, if you're gonna go to that restaurant that we're telling you should go to, you shouldn't go there after 6 o'clock because
Wow, really?
because the black people and the Spanish people are gonna come after you. And I'm like, are you
Really?
yeah, that's
crazy.
that. And like I remember my wife just fucking saying to me, "Is this real? Like this is what they say."
Certain demographics, certain areas,
And
certain times of year, I'm sure played a role too because they talk about a national essence, where we go through national time periods. Like right now, the sentiment I think of America has a different feeling than what it did like right out of World War II.
yeah, I know everybody
so
was like,
it's
hurrah.
also just who's kind of running for politics at the particular time. What year was this?
It was last year.
Okay.
I want everybody to understand. I'm actually at Josh's home right now,
Oh,
and he
yes,
he has a train. So if you hear the train on the podcast, it's what is it? The Emmaus
Listen, I call it-
Express.
Listen, I call it an Emmaus rainbow going by. And what's nice about a train is it pulls into context a time where you have no control over anything.
Yeah.
It truly is the most accurate way to get one of those Buddhist bells where they randomly ding it.
Yeah.
And you have to have a moment of peacefulness.
So we just sit there and we just soak in.
Well, are you going to try to fight a train? It's the
I'll fucking
literal
fight a train.
unmovable
Nah,
object.
I'm an unstoppable force. I'll take a train out. No, you know what? It's funny that you mentioned that because I also have a train in front of my house, and
Are you always like, I'm going to keep talking right over it and
I
I'm going
do.
to yell?
I do. I
Or
talk
do you just
over it.
go,
Well, actually, and it's a good point that you brought up with the randomness because part of the reason why I'm doing the podcast is I want to show people that like, hey, normal people like us can do podcasts like this, and it could be, I don't know,
at least
entertaining.
half of us?
Yeah, yeah, half of us. But you know, like, but you're on the show, and I want to show everybody that you know, even somebody
Yeah,
who's
this
got
is
a
great,
normal
really.
job. Yeah.
Honestly, what an honor. I mean, just to even be, I don't know what we were talking about. Something about the Matrix and
Oh,
something you were
simulation.
saying.
Simulation.
Simulation.
Well,
And then you say, "Hey, I'm doing a podcast." Which beyond, and I'm
Yeah.
like, "What?"
I know.
You know, and then just from you're like, some of the stuff that we really talked about. I'm like, what the heck? And then next thing you know, here we are with, I will definitely say, looking around, a fairly sophisticated setup here,
I
and a belief that I honestly can see through your action.
uh-huh.
You know, the commitment to seeing this thing kind of get this footing. It's exciting, and honestly, I think a lot of how I believe I should be is, based off of impact or seeing other people become successful, and to even just be even just a step amongst us. Congratulations, I guess. Is
Well, I don't know if I deserve a congratulations just yet, because it is just
Well,
it's like crawling, right? It's in the crawling stages. I don't
Yeah.
even know if anybody likes me.
I
I see
think-
I see people are viewing my material on YouTube, and there's like I think one of them is like got 215 views, which I'm ecstatic about.
yeah.
But there's like 10 likes, so I'm like, I guess nobody likes my stuff or something. Like, they're listening to it, but nobody cares. Hopefully they care. I'm doing this.
Hey, but even still, that's the question. It's being put out there.
Yeah.
Did Leonardo da Vinci fail because he wasn't around to see enough like buttons? Or is the impact really for something different than that? And
Wow.
is it really taking the action of going out and being heard in a way that could be assessed for what it is, and walking away and being like, take it or leave it?
Yeah.
10 likes.
Yeah. Oh, like, Leonardo da Vinci didn't get any likes, so he fucking he's like, oh,
Yeah.
my paintings suck.
Yeah. So,
Um,
I mean, just to even see this, regardless, hey, it's not like you're going, I'm going to go run a marathon and I'm training once a week and I hate it and I don't even like to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, people that jump into things like that have a passion, and passion is the fastest way to learn, to understand more things, to like better yourself in that field. Like, they talk about that it takes 10,000 hours or whatever. Ian
Yeah.
Gladwell or Malcolm Gladwell or whatever talks about how it takes 10,000 hours to be an expert in something. But not just 10,000 hours of doing something, 10,000 hours of like a desire to do something. Like, you go to work, you might be working or applying the thought an hour of that 8 hours. But when you're doing something that you enjoy, whether skateboarding or drawing or podcasting,
Yeah.
a lot more of the time that's actually being utilized is into it. So, I mean, it's you gotta
I
crawl
mean,
before you can run. So it's nice to see you didn't get hit by a car yet.
no, I know. I don't know.
Oh,
Like,
I'm
I mean,
sorry.
I've been fucking up a lot. Like, when I made a ton of mistakes. I know the first podcast has terrible audio. I fixed it with the second one. And I'm still learning. I don't know everything. I'm even doing the film editing, like, just to put it on YouTube. I don't fucking do that.
I would say I'd give it one more, and then if not, chuck it.
Yeah, yeah, fuck it. I give up. I quit. So it's funny because when I first did it, everybody was asking me, "So what is the point? What are you doing?" And I'm like, "I don't know. I don't know what the podcast is gonna be. But it's
That
turning
is
into
the
something."
question of philosophy.
Yeah.
Why am I even doing this?
Why? Yeah. Why are we even here?
But you gotta ask. Maybe it's not.
When I did the podcast, my thought process was I enjoy listening to podcasts, and I enjoy listening to comedians doing podcasts, and then they get their buddies in on it, and so, some of the comedians even bring people that aren't famous, and those people, I'm like, those people are just as cool as the comedians or the celebrities. And yeah, I love listening to like for example, Joe Rogan. This is pretty much a very similar format to the way he does his podcast. And I took inspiration from it because it's amazing. It's just a bunch of guys, raw, just talking, whatever. And that's great, but to a certain point, because he is a celebrity. He's a megastar, you know? And there's certain things, like, for example, I like sensory deprivation tanks, float tanks or whatever. And he has a sensory deprivation chamber in his home. Just a fucking whole room dedicated to that shit. And I'm like, I mean, when I hear him say that, I'm thinking, that's awesome. But at the same time, I'm like, but I'm never gonna fucking have that. Like, I wish I had that. Now I don't. I feel like shit.
Unrelatable.
Exactly. And so by doing this, I want people to see that, you know what, you don't have to be a megastar, you don't have to be a celebrity, you can be a normal guy that works in a fucking store selling crap, or you can be a garbage man, and maybe you have a lot of shit to talk about, because maybe that garbage man, he's like, oh, I was in the Marines and I traveled all over the world and blah blah blah, and now that's an entertaining story. And those are the type of stories those celebrities can't tell.
Original content is probably the most valuable resource, period.
Mm-hmm.
Original content is where creativity is stemmed. You know, you can only relate to things that are being said through. I mean, it's all so unique. It's hard to get. You know, it's very hard to find written words. You know, some of the oldest books, we have like one book from 500 BC. You know, or you know, it's so hard to get into individual viewpoints of things. And original content is how it is, either written or spoken.
Yeah.
So it's definitely a resource needed, and anything expertise related.
I mean,
Look at YouTube. YouTube's filled with stuff like how-to videos. Listen, if there wasn't original content, I wouldn't know how to quickly search for how to change a spark plug on an '88 Blazer. And guess what? I know I don't need to go down to the mechanic and actually ask an expert. I could just search for it because of the content.
you know, that's funny, because YouTube for me, since the beginning of like internet being a thing, and then YouTube was a thing, I was hooked. And I was a kid, you know, I was watching people posting like really shitty versions of like their cartoon snippets, and it was raunchy, and like they could do whatever they want. It was a little not too tasteful, so to speak. It was some dirty stuff but I've never seen it before. You know, that's the kind of stuff you can't find on television because of the censors and all that. But on YouTube, there was no censors. And I was hooked. I was watching like flash videos, cartoons.
That's what the problem with YouTube is, though. It's self-reinforcing. So whatever you start to look, it knows how to get you to want to click on the next thing. And next thing you know...
Well, no, that was when it was fairly new. So I don't think it had those algorithms at that point. Because
you got some smart guys making a ton of money.
Yeah, now they are.
Well.
They're fucking killing it. And I remember, what was it, like in 2008, I think, I had a group of friends, and they would say, Brian, why are you always on YouTube? And I'd be like, dude, this is the future. This is the fucking greatest thing. Like, how is it the future? I saw you just typed search poop, and now you're looking at poop videos. And I'm like, I know, but it's not just about poop, man. Like, you put poop, and then people like create some funny things with poop. And I don't know. I was younger. I was a fucking idiot. And but I think because of my fascination with it, there was something there, right? And I was always fascinated.
You could see something that had the value.
And you know, when I was a kid, I had my mom's video camera, and I started filming I forced my friends. They were like, dude, I don't want to film anything. I'm like, no, we're doing this. In fact, we're going to take this camera everywhere we go. And I was filming us doing like fucking sketches. I walked into like grocery stores and I started acting like an idiot, and I made sure that they filmed it.
Like a mini Steven Spielberg.
Yeah, I was fucking doing that.
He was like filming shit at like 8 years old, I think, or whatever.
Really?
Yeah. Like,
what kind of stuff?
I don't know. It's crazy. I mean, obviously, that just kind of goes to show how environment plays such a large role in who you become and what kind of access to resources. Obviously, the chances of Spielberg not being a Spielberg if he never had access to videotapes at 8 years old to film stuff.
Yeah.
You know, maybe a little bit of privilege there was all it took, but still, I don't know what the hell I was talking about.
I think when it comes to like this kind of work, as opposed to the kind of work that I do at my job, I think what I like is the randomness of it all, and I like that it forces you to have an original thought and original conversation, and it's not scripted.
But what kind of thought is that, though? When you're saying you have original thought,
like, for example, when I'm at work, I have a script in my head that I have to abide by, you know?
You have a plan that can sometimes help you achieve what your goal is.
Yeah, and that goal, that's not my goal, though. That's the company's goal.
Could be.
But I don't want it to be my goal. My goal isn't to make as much money as possible. My goal is just to enjoy what I do. Like, you know, when I go outside and I throw a football around with my friends, we're not making money doing that. I'm just enjoying throwing the football around, and I'm interacting with my friends. I enjoy that aspect of it. I don't like going into a job and now it's all fucking like the customer doesn't want to talk to me. I don't really give a shit about the customer either. And then the customer has to, you know, we have to humanize ourselves to a certain extent because he sees a suit or she sees a suit and tie coming over to try to take their money. And that's essentially what I am, but I got to create an atmosphere where I don't seem like that's what I am. But that is ultimately what I'm doing. But when when I'm doing this, me and you are just talking, and we're sharing our ideas, and we're giving ourselves information, and I want to leave this conversation going, you know what, I learned a lot, and that's why I have you on here, because fucking I've learned a lot from you. So that's honestly how I feel about work and all that shit. I don't know if I want to talk too much about that.
But man, I just so much of that was probably so much of that is a belief system that's built at a reflexive subconscious level.
Uh-huh. I think we should tell the audience right now. Josh is very, very well versed in philosophy.
Oh yeah, definitely.
That is so. That's the meaning of this video. We just kind of started talking like philosophy, this and that. But Josh is very well versed in philosophy. You know
Sometimes.
it in and out. You know all the fucking philosophers. And I'm really upset because Jose was supposed to be here with us, but he's not. But it's fine because we don't need him anyways. We got a fucking G over here. I'm not gonna talk anymore. I'm pretty much just gonna fucking hand it over to him because, and I'll add my 2 cents in. I'll ask questions, and then I'll let you run with it. The first thing I guess we should do, because that's the first thing I did when I was like, all right, we're gonna talk about philosophy. What the fuck is philosophy really? So I looked up what the definition of philosophy is, and I think we should probably explain what philosophy is because people know the word and they think they kind of know what it is. I realized I didn't know a damn thing what philosophy even was, let alone some philosophical arguments and whatnot. So, in your words, or words that you heard from other people,
Yeah, exactly.
What is philosophy?
Philosophy is, I think, literally broken down to mean just love of wisdom or love of knowledge. And, that applies down to whatever extent that you'd like to know something.
Mm-hmm.
Philosophy really is just, I don't know, it's the field of...
Well, I read a thing that philosophy, I think it was one philosopher said it can break down into 3 branches. And I know that philo is love, right? And then
love of wisdom,
right?
Yeah.
And then
philosophy.
I don't know, what are the 3 branches? I'm gonna look that up.
The philosophy. There's probably. Well, listen. By no means am I a complete professional, but I definitely do read quite a bit of philosophy, and I think that, as any philosopher would probably say, nothing I'm saying is original.
Yeah.
It's truly all built off of belief systems and structures that exist way before you. Nobody looks at the world in any particular way that hasn't already been built upon a previous belief. I would say, if you wanted a condensed version, how I like to describe the generic timeline of philosophy. Thousands of years ago, we used to just walk around and barter and kill people.
We still do.
Yeah, I mean, we do, really.
We're like, all right, let's drone strike
But then-
Iraq and take their gas.
And then societies came about, and societies started forming and kind of landing in places, and they started having civilizations, and civilizations started having laws. And what really kind of spurned up was teaching through education systems how to have arguments with people and rhetoric, and talking about how to trick somebody through tricks of the tongue and those kind of things. And then Socrates in 500 or 600 came out and started realizing that there's things that could be known about the world, to question it all. Where are you getting your belief system from? What does it mean to be able to argue this or that? And what does it mean to have certain truths? Like, what does it mean to know that math actually is applicable? What are the forms that things take? And this is all Socrates, Aristotle, Plato, and he started questioning everything that you could think of. What exists and what doesn't? Allegory of the cave. When you step out of the mountain, when you step out of the cave and you start to kind of
All right. So what's the what is the allegory of? Because that was done by Plato.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I knew that. See, this is the first fucking podcast I think, or probably the only podcast
Well-
I'll ever do where I had to do a shit ton of homework and studying, and I studied up for this one.
Definitely.
So Plato, he was the one that wrote the allegory of the cave.
Plato did the allegory of the cave.
And what
but-
is that?
Well, the big things, if you wanted to, it depends on how far down into the philosophy hole you want to go, or how current you like to go. Because a question I get asked often is, well, all right, just tell me what they believe now in philosophy. What does it mean now?
Okay.
And yet, why do we keep referencing these thousands of year old philosophers? You know, like, all right, we've moved past him though, right? We're give me somebody new. Mind, body, Rene Descartes, what is that?
Mhm.
You know, why are we reading Aristotle and Socrates? And it's all because of how it was perceived after them. So Plato was the first person to question his own.
Existent reality.
He was a student of Socrates. Plato believed that all reality was based off of perfect forms.
Mhm.
All right, like math existed, and that there was divine truths behind things. Aristotle was Plato's student and said that there's a natural element, there's a biology, a moving thing kind of thing, that there's truths that you can know through math and exactness, 90-degree angles, tonal scales and sound, so they thought. But then there's also a natural element. There's no mathematical truth that says an acorn grows to a tree. It's just what happens in the environment, you know, and questioning all those things. Now, I forget where that kind of jumps forward to, but in the allegory of the cave, it's recognition of a lot of the senses that exist. You know, when you step outside of the cave and you realize that everything that you perceive to be a truth when you're looking at these shadows of people walking around and talking.
All right, so I want to explain. I want to explain what the like. So I read it, or I read as much as I could of it, and then I watched videos of it and all that shit. The allegory of the cave is essentially, I think it was 4 individuals that were chained inside of a cave, and they're chained in a way that they're only staring at one wall. They can't move anywhere. They're just fucking looking at a wall, and it's dark, and there's a flame lit up behind them far enough that, you know, it's not burning them or anything.
And it's projecting their shadows against
It projects
a wall.
their shadows, but also other shadows, and they only see shadows. Like, can you imagine a world where you're in a fucking cave and you're chained down and you're staring at a wall in a cave, and there's just nothing but shadows on the wall, and that's all you saw in your entire fucking life? What's the like? You would think that, okay, these shadows must be real. This is reality. This is what reality is. It's just fucking
That
shadows.
questioning of reality.
And the allegory goes, so one of those guys breaks out of his chains or some shit. I don't fucking know how it goes, but he gets out of the chains, and he turns around and walks out of the cave, and for the first time in his life sees the world. I mean, it's gonna be fucking crazy bright. He sees the sun. He sees like the world, people walking around, and he's like, oh shit, like that. What I saw, what I thought was real, is not real. This is actually the real world, right? And then there's a lot of questions that, I mean, there's a lot of philosophies that go on just for
He looked
that.
behind the curtain, though.
Yeah.
He saw what was really there.
Yeah, but they're saying
Not just what he was seeing.
one of the questions that they said was, would you, let's say you're in the cave, would you have any reason to believe there is anything else but?
Well, of course not.
Yeah, no, you don't. But when you go out there and you see all that shit, one of, and I mean, there's so many. This is a huge fucking. Like he comes back and says to the other guys that are in the cave, like, you know, there's another world out there and blah blah. And the guys are like, you're fucking full of shit, and they kill him or something. They or not kill him, but do they kill him?
Actually, I don't remember, but
I think they or
the
they
point
want to
is
kill
they
him.
did not
They
accept
reject.
what he said.
Yeah, they rejected
and
it.
were like, they did not jump up and down and go, "Oh my God, that's amazing." They're like, "That is ridiculous." But that's so.
That's amazing fucking allegory. How did Plato? What was that 2,000 years ago or some
Yeah,
shit?
thousands of years
Psycho.
ago. 400 or 500 BC. You know, it's
Imagine doing that
But
experiment.
that was the questioning. You know, that was the questioning of what it meant to have different senses and whether is right or wrong. You know, is it all mathematics, or that kind of questioning is what philosophy is. That questioning of any type of question that's worth asking, and that you have. So, in the sciences and knowledge, that search for truth.
Mhm.
Socrates, Aristotle, and Plato, that kind of whole group really took and refined the way that we believe everything we believe right now through science, math, and everything. They started making distinctions in knowledge. And one of the things that they created was material objects, like things that were material, all right, that you could touch and actually see, like rocks, what things were made out of. And then math. And then everything else was metaphysics.
Yeah.
Metaphysics is the stuff beyond physics, the stuff that really is about that kind of experience, the consciousness, what it means to be, where we're at, what kind of truths can be known, what kind of things can be known about objects.
One of the questions that I heard, like somebody was like talking about the allegory of the cave, and they said, okay, so if you see the shadow of the object, right? And because they were in the cave, they thought that was reality. When they go out of the cave, they see that shadow was just kind of like a fake version or a lesser version of the real object, right? So like if I put an object in front of the flame and it casts a shadow and you think that's reality, it's not actually the reality of the object. The real object is this thing. But if you for the entire time thought that was real and now you know this is real, who's to say maybe that's not real either? Maybe there's a more real version of that object. For example, us. Like if I saw my shadow on the wall, I'd be like, oh, that's me. That's what I look like. And then I go, oh, there's a mirror. No, that's what I really look like. Well, I thought that's what I looked like a minute ago. And now I think this is what I look like. Am I right? Maybe there's another version of me that's even more real. And that question blew my fucking mind.
Yeah.
I was like, whoa, wait, what the fuck am I?
Where, not what, but where? Where am I
Where
in this
am I?
relationship to myself? Because that's a lot of context.
Yeah.
That's a lot of being. When you get to contemporary, current philosophy, a lot of the truths that most people believe are broken down into certain stems of how you can understand through relation of experience the world around you. And most of your actions are how you're being towards something.
Yeah.
There's parts to the allegory of the cave that really make you question, where is the reality of experience? Is it, so here's kind of, if you jump forward enough with it to some degree, in 3 steps, to really kind of put it into perspective how fast things have jumped, that was the first question of, am I just a shadow? Or am I just my hands and body? Because in all reality, you can replace my hand with other things. And I have an extension of self when I'm driving the car. I feel like I'm into, turning the car or experiencing my voice and what it sounds like versus when I'm deaf and I don't experience it.
Yeah.
All these kind of relations to self is what makes you experience everything. Jump that ahead, you realize that there's different levels of your even awareness. You're being aware of what you're doing and how you're doing it through conscious experience and feeling. And I don't know, next thing you know, you don't know what you're doing except for how you're feeling and how you're acting in the moment.
So there's and then there's the consciousness thing. Like that consciousness is something fucking philosophers are like they don't even know how they think they can explain it, but when you hear all of them talking about what consciousness is,
that's because we don't know the term.
Well, yeah, because you realize they don't know what the fuck they're talking about.
Yeah.
Nobody knows.
Yeah.
And
one of my favorite books that pulled into question, that answered a lot of the way the arguments were posed, at least so I thought, was A.J. Ayer's Language, Truth, and Logic, where he kind of breaks down into a mathematical kind of logical structure. I mean, don't quote me exactly, but the general essence is he realized that you could analyze any sentence and see through predicate understanding, whether what was being referred to was an object of experience or an object of math. And if you compared different levels of experience, you knew that experience was something that could only be subjectively understood, as opposed to a truth known through other means. So where, it might be true that 2 + 2 is 4, and that the dog over there is yellow, it's a different type of truth that's behind both. And you start to analyze all those things, and you realize that, sure, it's cool to know what kind of things you can answer, but it leaves a lot of things that you can't answer yet, too.
Yeah.
And consciousness is definitely one of those things. Consciousness is a subjective experience where what is consciousness? Do you refer to yourself when you're conscious is paying attention, like that's typically the argument. Consciousness is paying attention. One of these philosophers, a lot of philosophers actually, when they talk about consciousness, refer to like the zombies, like what a zombie is and whether or not a zombie has consciousness, and all the levels of zombies. Typically they say no. Typically a zombie doesn't have consciousness because, you know, it's just moving around and reacting.
It's kind of like when you're driving and
Yeah,
you're driving
not paying
home and you're
attention.
like, whoa, how the fuck did I get home?
Exactly. You were a zombie, or your level of consciousness is different.
Yeah.
Just like, how are you going to relate to your consciousness when you fall asleep tonight? You know,
Yeah.
now there's a different level of consciousness that everybody experiences a third of their life,
Well, there's
or
there's
not
the,
experience.
the sensory deprivation tank that I was talking about with Joe Rogan.
Mhm.
I don't know if you ever done that.
Mhm.
The sensory deprivation tank basically is, you know, you get into it. It's a tank that's got water. It's got like Epsom salt in it. Is that how you say it?
Yeah,
fucking
I
know.
definitely think it's something like that. But
Yeah.
it's so weird. I've never been in one, and
So-
I just imagine it as being like in your own head
It is because and
because
it's like
you don't have a body.
it's like being on.
It's the complete
crazy
opposite
drugs.
of being a tech warrior, where you step into a robot and you're even more than what you used to be.
Yeah, this is like you're less than.
This
what you
is
used to be.
like, instead of having robotic fingers that can control all sorts of other things, you're reduced down to nothing but your inner subjective mind.
So essentially, what
And most people go crazy.
well, yeah, I did. I was at first. It's kind of creepy.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
you go into a tank, and it's filled with water, and the water is your skin temperature, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when you touch the water, you almost don't feel the water, and you float on the water because it's got a shit ton of salt in it. So you're just floating on top of the water, and you don't feel the water. You don't feel. It just feels like you're floating in midair. And then you plug your ears so you can't hear anything, and you're in pitch black so you can't see anything. So you can't touch anything, you can't hear anything, you can't see anything, and I'm not gonna try to taste the salt water, like the fuck out of here with that. And now and you can't smell anything either. So you're just in total
Floating.
darkness, floating in the middle of nowhere. And your mind knows at first you're in a tank, but that slowly starts to go
'Cause
away.
that's location.
Yeah,
And location changes, just like on a boat or on an elevator,
yeah.
you know, or an escalator, all that stuff. And it's all they need are two more things: a feeding tube and a little plug to the back of your skull.
And then you're in the Matrix, and then you're in a simulation.
Yeah, but that's what it is. Just all our body is just electrical signals anyway,
yeah.
triggering on and off, and what we think is a reality.
That's what Morpheus said. He's saying, what is real? How do you define real? If real is just what you can see, what you can taste, what you can touch,
That's
then real is
empiricism.
just electrical signals interpreted by your brain.
It is.
That's my favorite fucking movie ever made. If I could be in any movie, I'd want to be in the Matrix.
Oh.
Maybe I am in the Matrix. I don't know. But consciousness, right? Going back to that, one of the things. If you hear any noises, by the way, that's his dog. He's got a doggy. What's his dog's name?
Carolina.
Carolina.
Yeah,
She's
12.
a really sweet doggy.
She's being towards time right now
Yeah,
because
she's-
she has a demise coming.
What was I say? All right, so going back to consciousness, one of the things that I discovered when researching, so that I don't sound like a moron in front of you, was like, who am I or some shit? Like, what's the matter, doggy?
I think I might have to put her outside for a
You want to
second.
put her outside?
But go ahead. You know what? Let's enjoy
Yeah,
the presence
yeah,
for
I
a
don't,
second.
yeah. I don't want the dog here. I want the dog here. So, but basically, they're saying, you know, who are you? Who you really are? Because one of the things that it talked about and the flaws of that is, if you know you are the way you are right now, this is your personality. Is that what makes you who you are? Because if you got into a car accident and your brain is like, I guess you get a brain injury and you're kind of like mentally challenged now, are you still Josh, or are you somebody else? And I would
Are you
say
the same person that you are or were 10 years ago? Because you could pull it that way too.
Yeah.
Like, because the question ultimately then is, are you the person now that you were 10 years ago, or 5 years ago, or 10 minutes ago?
Yeah.
If you're the same person, that's what kind of moves forward with you. Whatever parts aren't the same you, such as the knowledge that has been acquired, or, you know, physical differences as well too, like the night that's in your eye, you know, after however many years or
Yeah.
something, or the scars, that's a different type of you. You know, so the question is, who will you be in whatever amount of time, and who you'll be now is only a referent to the moment that you're in at that exactly, like right now, like being mindfully aware of the microphone, and
And the dog is over here ready to fucking. Was she hungry or something?
She probably just wants to go out.
All right, I'm gonna pause it for now. You can let her out.
All right, so
Okay, we're back. We're just letting the dog out. So the dog is very needy, and we had to let her out. Carolina. Josh really loves his dog.
yeah, she's cute.
Yeah,
She definitely trained me to
she trained you well.
take her out all the time.
All right, so I don't remember what we were talking about. To be honest with you, I think we were talking about
Those
like
ads you were selling.
I was
with that
selling
break.
ads. Yeah. I'm gonna move on, I guess, because I forgot what it
No,
was.
philosophy.
We're talking about philosophy,
philosophy, consciousness,
consciousness,
zombies,
talking about
and dogs.
and dogs. But basically, one of the things that I talked to Josh about, because I'm going to completely go to the next subject, was the conversation of the Matrix.
The conversation of the Matrix.
I'm just going to go to that right now.
And your
'cause-
deprivation chamber that you were
the
plugged
deprivation
into.
chamber, yeah. Because the Matrix, to me, was the first movie that I watched. I saw it when I was a kid, and I didn't know what the hell I was seeing. I just liked the action sequences and the fact they're wearing leather and shit. But then I watched it again, I think right before I graduated high school, and I sat down and I actually watched the movie because I love fucking watching movies, right? I love movies.
Why did you even like it though?
With the
'Cause
first
you thought
time,
it was all fake.
the
You
first
thought
time
the
it's-
world was fake, or was it the direct? Was it the cinematography?
it was the way they told the
Special
story.
effects. I like the bullet thing. I was like, I would want to move slow motion. I'm like, I want this to be a video game.
I guess the most intriguing part
That's the old
was,
superhero question. Like, do you want to be invisible or fly?
yeah, that was. I think that's
Or
what it was.
invincible, or whatever.
Yeah.
It was just, I want to move around bullets.
Well, that's the thing. I'm really big into comic books
Yeah.
and superheroes and Batman and like all that stuff. So it was kind of like a new version of a superhero, but it's like if you can figure out a way to control the world around you, you can make the world work for you.
Yeah, but
as if
just
you're
like,
a superhero.
Just like all of us individually, Neo still had limits,
Neo did have limits. He did have limits.
so he was still working within restraints, just like all of us. So did he get all pissy pants that he couldn't control everything? Yeah. Then he started hitting things.
No, I don't. It's not that I'm not upset that I can't control everything.
Oh,
but
wait a second. Is this about you now?
no.
No, just
I think the Matrix, just that question
yeah.
to question everything, because that's how I was. I always grew up questioning all
Exactly.
authority figures. You know, I questioned my parents a little too much. I questioned all my teachers. Even the fucking cop. If a cop was saying some shit to me, I'm like, "Fuck you!" Like, what makes you better than like? Why? Because you have a fucking gun and a badge means you're allowed to like really do what you want.
Did you think that it was legitimate? The Matrix, it proved it all was a trick. That there was something else there.
It's crazy because
It's a
it's like if
belief.
if you create some kind of world like the Truman Show, that's another movie. He thought that was real.
That's a medical. I think that's in the DSM, the
Yeah.
Diagnostic Statistical Manual, to have that type of itis or whatever, Truman Show itis or whatever, where you believe that you're being watched all the time and that everybody around you is
Out to
part
get
of,
you.
Well, not out to get you, in on the secret of like, just like a Westworld, you know. or
You know,
like-
that's fucking funny because
you go, oh, well, listen, here. Oh, I'm at this place. Customers are supposed to act like customers, and here they are acting like customers. You know, oh, here we go. We're in another spot. You know, we all act a particular
Yeah.
role. And then you realize, oh, wait a second here. You know, are we just plugged into something somewhere? And how do you legitimize whether you are or not, except for questioning your own experience?
yeah, that's how I
Or
was.
pushing limits.
That's how I am growing,
Like trying
growing
to
up.
fly, jump across a building.
Like there's certain things that I'm like.
But Truman Showitis and
I used to question that kind of shit. I used to be like
You
when
should.
when I went to church. Okay, this is where it all came from.
yeah, of course.
When I used to go to
belief system.
church-
a Christian belief system, right?
It was
In
my-
reincarnation.
My parents are
obviously, you're not a
Catholic.
pagan. Yeah, okay.
Catholic,
Sure.
so-
Jesus, Western culture.
I'll never forget it, dude. I'll never forget. It's fucking burned in my brain. Like, you go to church and everybody's fucking. They stand up when they tell you to stand up. That you sit down when they tell you to sit down. You get on your knees when they tell you to get on your knees. You put money in the fucking basket and then like you leave. And I'm like, what the fuck was all that for? And my parents would be like, well, that was mass. That's what we go there for. I'm like, that was bullshit. I don't. Why are we going to this? Obviously, that conversation didn't go so well. My parents definitely got mad at me for that. Because my parents, they're Hispanic.
I'm just nodding my head like, yeah. And you're like, no, listen, this was a traumatizing
Dude,
part of
my
life.
parents beat the shit. They were like, "Oh, could you say that? It's not for choke slams." But in the church, I listening to the fuck. Like, who is this guy? Like, how come I've never fucking? He's never at my parties. Who the hell is he? Yeah. And the priest is like, spewing whatever bullshit, and I'm like, I don't agree with any of the shit
What
he just
didn't you
said.
agree with? And did you know that all the way up until, for all of existence and all of humanity, up until 50 years ago, like that was the answer: divine intervention
know.
to some degree, or natural things. So just
I
be
think
able
that's
to
what made me
question-
mad.
Just to be able to question that thought, like it changes some things, but not all things. Like at the end of the day, does the world being flat versus round really change our lives? Most of the people live in a world where whether it's flat or round, it doesn't really affect them. They're not using maps or geometry in a way that it applies that knowledge. But it helps you like understand certain things better. Just in the past 50 years though, or 100 years since Nietzsche came out, and Darwin, really, the questioning of whether or not those things really matter. Like, hey, wait a second, are we going to be around after this? Are we doing this? Are we turning the other cheek, which was what Nietzsche used to argue all the time? Are we accepting certain moral belief systems that we can tell have come into culture around Christianity's times, such as, turning the other cheek when hit, which is more of like a slave mentality class, as opposed to doing what the Romans did, which was an eye for an eye kind of stuff, or like all these other people, like, or living life for the moment, or living life for the next life. And
Yeah, what the hell's all up with that? I
but
can't
that's-
stand that. Just fucking live your life the way you want to live it. I mean, obviously, don't kill anybody and don't fucking hurt anyone. But if you're not hurting people,
But that's also a philosophy. So what is the balance? Nietzsche pulled into question, well, when you look at the best animals, survival of the fittest. So what kind of things are traits that you're supposed to look for? And then you question certain types of moral things that might be like, is monogamy the right way, or is that a Christian moral? Just to
like the Mormons, they have like 25
Yeah,
like
exactly.
fucking yeah.
or in some cultures that are civilizations and stuff or whatever, they, it is more of an eye for an eye kind of thing. But even just being able to question that when somebody's talking about that stuff at a church, I guess, Catholics, anything
Yeah.
like that is all built off of, a lot of, well, I think what turned me off, what made me question a lot of it was I'm like, what do you mean an ark?
Yeah. I mean, there are some
I'm like-
I remember in class, because I went to Sunday school,
Yeah.
and I'll never forget this day. They were talking about, what were they saying? They said something about like, he walked on water, Jesus walked on water, and he did this and he did that. And I was like, oh, like, I watched a magician do that on TV. Kind of like, so he's a magician. And I said, because I was a kid, I didn't know what I was saying could be offensive. It was a legit question in my, I think, it's still
Offensive
looking
is
back.
only to certain people, like a group like that. I didn't even think of that as offensive when you're asking that. I
Yeah.
don't think that is asking a question.
I'm asking a question. I'm honestly asking, like, is he a magician? And they're like, how the fuck could you know his was real? And I'm like, what? And dude, because I had we had
Repent.
nuns and shit, and they fucking hit me and like whatever.
Yeah.
So that was my first introduction to religion, and I think
Don't
that's
ask
why
questions.
I like,
to not ask questions.
yeah, because they're saying don't fucking ask questions. You're not allowed to ask that, and how dare you even try to ask? That's offensive. I'm like, I'm offensive. So I have to just listen to all the bullshit you're saying and just take it, and I don't want to come off as angry. I don't hate religion because my parents are religious. A lot of my friends are the Felicos who were just on the podcast. They're Christians, and even people we work with who I respect and people I love believe in religion.
Well, I'm
And
Christian.
okay, so there you go. So basically, what I'm trying to say is
But listen,
that's the
question is-
belief thing. I just said you can believe it, and it's not going to affect what we have going on, And I still respect everything else because you have a lot of wisdom and all that shit. So I was just, I guess I felt like Neo in the Matrix, where I just lived in this world, and I was like, I guess I mean, I don't think so, but like, that's the way it is, and I just have to deal with it. And Neo was the same way in the movie. Like, you can see him, he's going through his job, he's like, this is all bullshit. I don't believe in any of this crap. And then, so, like Morpheus said, you're right to question
Now,
everything.
What would you do if the end of the movie, end credit scenes?
You were
after it
wrong.
all- after it all, ready? For somehow you just lifted up, somehow you lifted up your own things and you realized that you were just somewhere, you know? Or what if Neo was in a dream within a dream, like an Inception?
Inception, yeah.
You know, where all of a sudden Neo's like, wait a second, what do you mean there's another phone?
Yeah, oh shit.
What do you mean there's a purple pill?
Or no, like he's in the real world, and then they go, all right, Neo, this is actually another world we brought you in because we wanted to see if you really are the one. And now that you made that decision, we know that you're the one. We're ready to put you in the real world.
And that, ready? Guess what that real world is? The world we're in right now.
Yeah, that would be pissed. I'd be so fucking mad. Like, guess what, Brian? You made it to the other side. Here's
Hey,
your consolation prize.
Great job. That game was called Far Cry.
Yeah.
You know, or whatever.
Yeah, well-
or I'm sorry, that job was called Northeastern American.
So that goes
2000.
that goes with Elon.
Pre-nuclear Holocaust.
So Elon Musk, Tesla,
Yeah.
right?
CEO of Tesla.
Yeah, he said
The
that.
battery guy, SpaceX.
Yeah,
I
all
think
of that
about
shit.
it. You
He's
know,
a genius.
the amount of money some people have, but not only that, just the foresight. Like, he definitely is not building ships big enough for all of humanity.
No,
That Musk family, there's going to be Muskians.
That's
Or
why-
whatever,
that's why I
Martians.
fucking like. I'll talk about that in a minute. Actually, I want.
anyway, sorry,
yeah,
guys.
because
Elon Musk.
that was gonna take me in another
I didn't
tangent.
even
I
know
would have
we
been
were-
angry.
Is he in the Matrix too with us?
Well, what he said was he says we are most certainly in a simulation, and I have math on my side to prove it.
Mm-hmm.
And when I saw that, I was like, "Whoa, what the hell?" So, basically, the concept is if there are two versions of you. One of you is the real version, and the other one is the version I put in a video game that I created to emulate or to simulate reality, right? So that means you have a 50% chance of being in a simulation, right? Because the one in the game thinks he's real. He thinks he's the real Josh, but the one out here knows he's the real Josh, right?
Did you see the 6th Day where he's like, I don't know which one I really am?
Yeah.
Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Yeah, and he thought he was the clone. He was like, I'm not the clone. You're the clone. Like, no, dude, you're the clone. You just woke up.
But
I'm
each
the
one
real
of them
one.
was their own self. That's the point, though.
Yeah.
Like, you can't really question. Like, I'm not confusing myself with thinking that I'm actually you.
Yeah. I mean, you could.
But go continue, Josh.
Yeah. In like basically they bring up like Minecraft, right? Minecraft sold over 1.8 million copies, right?
I love Minecraft.
Now imagine if Minecraft, right, was that game where we simulated reality with Josh in it. And there are 1.8 million versions of that game. So the chances of you being one of those other versions is 1.8 million out of 1, right? Or 1.8 million to 1. And so he's like, so do the math. Now, like over time, that continues to sell at the same rate every single year. I mean, you're multiplying those odds by billions at this point. So now there's billions of chances of you being in a simulation and not being the original Josh. Because if all the other simulations are perfect simulations of our reality, the chances of you being in a simulation are just astronomical. And he's like, that's what I mean when the math is on my side. And that's pretty much what he said. That's the concept of it. After hearing that, and then he said, now let's say those simulations have simulations within themselves.
Yeah.
Now you're multiplying all 1.8 billion or whatever again and again and again and again. And now the chances of you're most certainly, definitely in a simulation. And he brought up Nick Bostrom, who he says the simulation theory is there are three outcomes. Either humanity is going to become extinct before they have the capability of creating a simulation. Number 2, humanity has the capability of creating a simulation and just choose not to do it. Or number 3, you are most definitely in a simulation. And those are the 3 outcomes. And I'm like, wow, dude. Like, so is this real? Like, could this be? And that made me question reality. And I'm like, oh my God, it's like I am in the Matrix. This is fucking now. So like the Matrix, when I saw the movie, it reminded me of when I was growing up and dealing with religion. and my qualms with it, and then it turned into like that technical world and all that shit, and like video games are becoming more realistic, and now we got fucking Elon Musk saying we're definitely in a simulation, and now it's like, so everything keeps going back to that movie. I can't get away from it, but it is my favorite movie, and that's why I find it the most fascinating topic to talk about, because if you are in a simulation, this is the $1 million question, would you really care if you found out this isn't real? Would you want to leave the simulation? And the Matrix, it asks all those type of questions, because there's a character named Cypher in the movie
Where
who,
he's like, I love the steak too much. Keep me in here.
yeah, and that's and he says, the line that he says is, I know when I put this in my mouth, the Matrix is telling my mind that it tastes delicious and just tender and juicy and whatnot. And then he eats it and he says, after 10 years of being in the real world, you know what I've realized? And he just missed, like, I don't really give a shit, but he says it anyways. He goes, ignorance is bliss.
Mm-hmm.
And to a certain extent, like, he's got a fucking point.
Yeah, definitely.
Like, because the real world sucked.
Well, what is the real world? Because guess what? You can put on glasses
Mm-hmm.
and get a different perspective on the world around you. And I enjoy wearing glasses, even though it's not the real world as it is. It's how I perceive it.
Yeah.
Sometimes I like a sharper, crisper view on things. Am I convinced that it is the world as it is? No, because there's a difference. There's a distinction between what something is in and of itself and then how it's experienced. Kant talked about it in the 1850s or whatever. There's a phenomena and a noumena, and we can know everything there is about a phenomena, but we can never really know something about the noumena, the thing in and of itself, because there's a boundary that's understood. And knowing that, though, you can understand which things take what side of the boundary. We could be in a simulation, but then the other question is, does it matter? And then the question isn't necessarily, does it matter in the grand sense to everybody? Because it's not about everybody. Who's it about? You right now, the guy behind the eyes,
Yeah.
listening in the podcast right now. Where is that person? How do you feel about exactly how it is? Because whether or not you actually didn't realize you were colorblind, and there's a pill we could take that allows you to see ultraviolet or every color, does that mean that we've been missing out on the experience? The fact that science knows every element of our bodies to every extent. I mean, every sense that we have. We know how taste breaks down to electrical signals, like what sour does chemically that transfers and changes chemically into electrical signals that shoot to our brain.
Mm-hmm.
We understand, everybody used to think that it was the five senses: touch, taste, smell, sight, and whatever the other important one is.
Yeah.
But, what we've realized is it's even more complicated than that. It's not just taste, but it's different variations of taste, such as intensity.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just touch, but it's pressure and heat. And when you really realize all the different ways that your body takes inputs from the world around us, and how it creates a spectrum of multiple different buttons being turned on and off, pressure points, guess what? If I knew the exact signals to send to my brain that would apply pressure to my tongue and hit the sour and blueberry levels and receptors, and if my sight buttons put me in a perspective area that looked as if I was at a baseball park in 5th grade, I might think that it was a Sour Patch Baby that I threw in my mouth, even though it's just electrical signals that they know how to apply in a certain way. Now, what that feeling might evoke is hard to interpret, but all we're doing is reacting to what we perceive all those electrical signals are doing right now to us in this moment.
Mm-hmm.
Now, having an open range, an open realm or world to kind of navigate and move around allows you the experience of interacting with things, so that it isn't just binary or let along. But then the other question is, all right, so I'm within some restraints.
So does that mean we don't have free will?
Determinism.
Yeah.
The question, the philosophical question of determinism, is probably the most, or if not the most, the top 100, because there's a billion questions in philosophy.
I know.
Is it all planned out? And that's, once again, I think, a subjective thing. Do you feel like science would ever know enough to predict exactly what you would do in any moment?
Well, that's the thing, is they say that they can. They, based on the patterns that they've recorded, like they I don't know. They
Well, we can do. Listen, we can deterministically do things already. We can, in chemistry and physics, we look down. We people, humanity. Definitely not a me.
Well, we as in all
But-
of us.
But,
All of us. Yeah.
we look down at individual elements in a controlled environment and know what happens almost down to the umpteenth degree when one thing touches another thing and how it's going to interact. And we can go larger and larger than that. But after a while, it kind of breaks down and different things emerge from the combination of things. Like we know physics, but physics does not explain how chemical things combine, which is why we had to create another subgroup of science and things that we could know, because physics did not explain chemistry and how chemistry interacts. Just like biology is built off of chemistry and physics, but it's a whole different field because physics and understanding how atoms combine doesn't explain why a plant grows in a particular way.
Yeah.
And every different type of element of knowledge, I don't even remember where that rabbit hole. I feel like every now and then I
Well, that's the thing. Knowledge is when you say when you without a shadow of a doubt.
determinism.
Yeah.
When
like-
you know the next thing,
Uh-huh.
right? Sorry, not to,
Like no, it's when you know something and there is no other possibility. It's
Correct.
just that's what it is. That's what knowledge is, right?
sometimes when you can anticipate things, but that's another way to understand certain knowledge. You can understand something theoretically or in practice. Like doctors run a practice because they apply their knowledge in a physical environment. There's no mathematical certainty that you chop a bone off here and you walk out of here with that. That's a physical
Yeah.
science, not a theoretical science. But yet, that's why you have mathematicians that all of a sudden turn into nuclear bomb physicists, because they're operating down at the mathematical scale and the physical scale to see how properties combine, and then next thing you know, like they can shift fields. Just like chemistry, just like psychology is really, that continual kind of trying to understand people and personalities and what it means to be, as far as what can be known about the people in this world of things that we can know. Like we can know physics, we can know math, we can know chemistry, we can know biology. Can we know ourselves? Can we know what makes people people? What can be known? And does knowing something without certainty necessarily, if you can't know something 100%, does that still mean that it's not necessarily good information? Such as, if 90% of the time something's going to happen, I still feel like that has a value to it.
Yeah, because you can continue to like survive.
Yeah,
because it's better to know what could
But
happen.
Is it bad to know it without absolute certainty? And is that something we should throw away then if we don't know it 100%? The answer is no, I would
No,
think. Like
no.
if you know
But
95% of the time something's going to happen.
The thing about science is it's always adapting. It's always changing.
Not every science.
Not
math,
ev-
certain types of math and logic, when you add 2 plus 2, that's not adapting or changing. That'll always be a truth. But a truth like biology, or how something's perceived can change. They call that temporal versus atemporal realities. Atemporal and temporal. I think temporal means, I might have this backwards, but temporal, I think, is experience. Where things that you understand and know to be true through experience are temporal. Things that are atemporal are not time important, which means they're things that will always be a truth regardless of time.
Like 2 + 2 = 4.
90-degree angles.
But then eight was it temporal would be when you have to conduct an experiment
Yeah,
to
sure.
find out.
Absolutely.
Okay. Kind of like if you go, oh, if I touch this, it's really hot. I needed to wait for it to get hot, and
Definitely.
then I had to do it again, and I had to see if someone else tries it now. Will it burn them? Like, oh, yep. So there you go. It burned both of us. So don't fucking do that
Yeah,
anymore.
Exactly.
All right. So, I mean, this is fucking interesting. Too. My mind is just sometimes when we talk about this kind of shit, my mind just goes, all right, hold on, I need a timeout. My brain is about to explode. But one of the things that I looked up was when they look at the philosophy behind everything in the science, like they can figure out, how fire burns. It's because oxygen and whatever the fucking combustion and energy being released or whatever, but they don't know why fire is a thing.
Sure.
They just know how it is a thing, but they don't know why it's a thing. And that's like, man, like, so like everybody's got that same question. Like, why do I exist? Like fire must be like, I don't know why I'm a thing. I know how I'm a thing. Kind of like humans. We know how our brains work. We know how our, eyes, how we can see is because light is bouncing off of that object and then going into, so we're interacting with the object
in a packet.
Yeah.
They say like a light wave or whatever that reacts in a certain way. Sometimes hits the back of our eyes and flicks a trigger, and next thing you know, our sense of rods and cones trigger certain types of things.
It's really interesting. Now, then we wanted to see like closer. We needed to see closer into an object. So like I need to see the molecular structure of this table, and now I want to see. Then you can see as far as atoms, but apparently you can see even more. There is no limit to how small you can get.
Well,
and that reality
we go onto the other side of things. We go to the other side of the mirror, as I
Yeah.
think I've heard it be called, because with physics and science, we use math to predict future things. When a good example is the table of elements. You can imagine that, right?
Uh-huh.
With hydrogen.
Periodic table?
Yeah,
Periodic table
elements.
of elements.
So here's something that's so amazing, because we started getting them, and we're like, oh, here's one, here's another one, here's another one. We started lining them up, right? And we're like, oh, here's one, here's one, here's one, here's one. And after however many were discovered, however many came later, we started realizing if you put it in a certain order, it followed a mathematical kind of harmony.
Wow.
And then we started realizing, wait a second, it does, except for a few of these missing ones that are here and a bunch of down here. And then we started going, well, I wonder if the math would prove like that there's should be something there. We just haven't found it yet. And should we search for something because when we set it up this way, it looks like we're missing a few? And a lot of times it's like, oh yeah, maybe. And that's how we find a lot of elements, that we predict future things through the study of how math and application of these things play a role in the sciences like that. Same thing with physics. So kind of looking at the other side of the mirror is when we apply physics down to a certain degree, we see things way beyond, we can technically see, but most of our knowledge at the in physics comes down to understanding how to apply certain types of dimensional math, multiple dimensions, all right, application of different
That's
ways
amazing.
to perceive something so that it can apply particular types of math and predict future events, and they're pretty good with it. Like at this point, they have a lot of stuff figured out. Like they understand how the application of math, but whether that understanding of math is a reality or not. Now, here's a way that, from a dimension standpoint, there's different ways to perceive something through, length, height, width, in time, intensity, brightness. And these are all things that could be occurring at any one particular moment. Like I'm looking at you, and there's different dimensions in a way that I'm kind of perceiving you, but that don't necessarily relate to each other. Like they don't have an effect, but there's a separate element of itself that exists that doesn't necessarily affect something, but could still be existing in that time and place. Application of a lot of that type of math is what allows physics to predict a lot of that stuff. But it doesn't also give us any understanding of who we are or why we're here.
Yeah. And another thing is, because you said that science is like figuring out a lot of stuff. One of the things, and this is from philosophy, is they think they know, but they don't know shit. And I'm like, what? I'm going to listen to this. And they said, for example, you can't explain what gravity is. There's just some guy said, I'm going to call it gravity.
Well,
but
Newton.
who's to say it's just little gremlins or some
Newton,
shit?
he was a big deal.
Yeah. Well, yeah. No, I know, Newton. But he said, like, he couldn't figure out what gravity was. He just called it gravity.
But the important part is he applied math to something. And realized, oh my God, here is something that when you drop an apple at such and such and do whatever and all these things.
No, he knows how it can affect other objects and that there is a force doing that, but he doesn't know what the force is, why it's a thing. He doesn't understand how it's even doing nobody does. We just know that it's there, but we don't know why or how.
Yeah, but it's still important to know.
It's important that we know that it exists.
We don't know
but
why
we don't know
waves
why.
splash on the shores.
Huh?
We don't know why waves splash on the shores, but understanding tidal charts and stuff still give us a reason to work around it. It's that application, the application of a truth that's important. In philosophy, it's like, wait a second. Here's something that I didn't know could even be known. And now to know a kind of step in the process or something that exists around it makes you think, well, what other kind of things are crazy like that's kind of known? Like language, the use of language and how you talk and how that creates an environment around you, what it means to understand through perception things. Understanding Darwin and how you apply that kind of belief system to who you are. All these things play a role in the moment.
This is blowing my mind every time I talk about this shit, man. I'm just like, it's too much.
Math is understanding. Math and truth stumble across each other so often.
Yeah.
That all of a sudden, out of the blue, you realize that 80% of such and suches occur wherever and have this kind of a return, or how certain elements and forces. One of the crazy ones, like, here's where mathematics and a truth come out to play in not just physical worlds, but how we experience things. So you have Newton, who realized that you could apply mathematical terms and understand types of things that exist, not necessarily what gravity is, but that there is gravity and this is how it affects certain things. And it's out there, you can apply this kind of math and do with it as you will. I think it was John Stuart Mill or Jeremy Bentham who wrote On the Wealth of Nations and talked about capitalism and how societies are kind of created, and how most structures, and this is kind of a common theme, most structures and civilizations are built off of working class and the creating manufacturing class in a way. So, I mean, you had kings and queens. Well, first you had like slaves and people,
Yeah.
and then
Peasants
you had,
and all that
then
shit.
you had kings and peasants, which was kind of a different kind of thing, and then you had but in a lot of these systems, it was the person in charge that was deciding how much of something to do. Hey, I want you to build those pyramids for me because I said so.
Yeah.
Hey, I want you to make this many crops of corn for me because that's how much I'm saying. On the Wealth of Nations or on Capitalism or whatever the book was, he talks about how, a better system than having somebody tell you what to make is let it figure out what it needs to make on its own, and people trade to figure out what kind of stuff is valuable or not, because people want to profit on things and go, well, listen, if there's a gap here to make corn and I'm going to live a better life off of making some corn, I'm going to make it. Just like a garbage man or any job that you have or whatever position, you know what I mean? And capitalism, this free kind of mathematical thing that exists in civilization and societies, can take over. It was a natural science. Like with Darwin, here was another application of knowledge that existed not in mathematical form, but selection through natural selection, where it was kind of not survival of the fittest, but natural elements played a role on how animals became to be or what kind of traits they had.
Mm-hmm.
But natural sciences versus the mathematical sciences, and how math intertwines itself with knowledge and science. And then, once again, kind of taking it to the moment where you're like, well, what the hell does it all matter anyway for? But it's knowing that knowledge exists out there and how it could be applied that a lot of times allows you to see where you're at in any particular moment.
Wow. Well put. Well put. That was bravo. But I'm going to go back to the theory of, you said something about binary or whatever. And I was talking about, like the simulation, all that shit. And would we want to even like connect ourselves in a simulation? But the Matrix asked the question, going back to the Matrix,
Mm-hmm.
if the machines were the ones that took over and now we're just slaves to that,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then I was saying how there's a question in the movie where the guy's like, how do the machines know what food tasted like?
Mm-hmm.
How do they know that the flavor of this is going to taste like that? Maybe they're wrong.
Mm-hmm. And
then you said, and I remember I was telling you over the phone the other day, and you said, well, no, I can prove how machines can do that. It's true. They can pretty much, I guess, simulate flavor and sound, because we're doing it right now with our phone, and we're doing it right now with the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Yeah.
how did you explain it? You said it's taking the sound waves and
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
coding it into a binary code,
Yeah,
and
sure.
then it.
Well, everything that you kind of it's in relation to kind of what is a conscious being, or who do you relate to, or what does it mean to be real, and who are you getting this truth from? And I said, well, great. So a robot can tell you, what ice cream you're gonna like, But do you really, like you were saying in the Matrix too, do you really, when you hear a robot tell you what a steak tastes like, do you believe it? Do you believe the robot's really sensing what a vanilla ice cream tastes like as compared to what you imagine it to taste like? Or do you think that it's just interpreting knowledge? And I guess a lot of it also kind of comes down to who you're communicating that information to. And if, I never confuse myself to think that because I'm talking through a microphone or through a phone to somebody else, and that phone is taking my compressed sound waves that I'm kind of spitting out of my mouth and hitting a microphone at the bottom of my phone and pressurizing something that then creates an electrical signal that sends it to a Wi-Fi signal, that sends it to the satellites, that sends it back down to your phone where you're hearing it, and compressing your ear where it's then compressing some kind of motor, that I don't think that the microphone is listening in on our conversation, even though it's interpreting the knowledge in a particular way. It's communicating it through a means.
And it's
Now-
almost like it's almost like an identical match to the voice that
Now-
comes out of your mouth.
Now, all of consciousness, though, it shares the trait of knowing and seeing and understanding directive, I guess. Understanding somebody is understanding what you're saying. Like if I say, can you hand me such and such? Can you hand me my phone over there?
There you go.
And if you had no idea what I was talking about and couldn't even understand it, then I'd be like, well, what the hell?
Yeah, what's the point of even talking to
Yeah,
him?
exactly. I guess a lot of it is in relation to getting that kind of feedback response on whether or not it matters or not. If for a long time, where a lot of animal rights comes from is up until very recently, humanity never really thought of animals as being the same type of being or consciousness as humans.
Yeah.
But now all of a sudden we started realizing that they act the same way when we do constant same things, like they wag, like they act physically positive when they're wagging their tail, and that's something that we can experience as the feeling of happiness or joy. Now we can also teach a robot to respond that way, given certain types of combinations of response things and everything, but whether or not we believe it to be, and also how we act around it, plays a big role on how we feel like we are in ourselves from a conscious being, and how we relate to the world around us. They talk about this study the one time, and this is one of my favorite studies that kind of talk about artificial intelligence and whether or not it matters.
Jesus, here we go.
So there's
The
they
Terminator.
did this study on children. I forget what age, probably a bunch of different age groups, but they kind of condensed it down, and they had them all hold a baby doll upside down, like a Barbie doll upside down, and they wanted to see how long they could hold the Barbie doll upside down, and they could do it forever. And then they took a gerbil and made them hold that upside down until they didn't feel comfortable anymore. And after a few seconds, the gerbil would kind of be like, and they'd put it down. Now, the big one that really was the eye-opening element of it was then they took a Furby and flipped that upside down. And now, while it didn't, because after a while it goes, oh, I'm dizzy.
It does, yeah.
Yeah, little thing, its eyes go like, oh, you're killing me.
Oh my
You know,
God.
or- no, or
Don't do
whatever.
this to me.
Please, why?
Oh,
Why, master?
you
No.
bitch.
but ultimately, what they realized is, while it didn't go forever, like a Barbie doll, where they could really hold it upside down and not have any emotional feeling,
Uh-huh.
it was definitely not forever. It was like 10 seconds or something. So it was closer to the real live living gerbil thing.
Mm-hmm.
And what kind of person you are and how you would react to that experiment, where you would feel like, well, what do I want to do to this Furby?
Yeah, fucking spike it on the ground.
Smash!
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. I don't care how you react. Is the same way that we felt humanity towards a lot of animals.
Yeah.
We kill animals and don't eat a chicken because it's a living being.
We're still doing it though.
Yeah,
They're still.
definitely.
I mean, you see the chicken coops and
Well,
shit.
to even other people.
Oh, I know. Oh, shit.
Seriously.
Whoa. It's true. Like,
Yeah.
fucking, I mean, with the Syrian refugees and all that, and they're like, get the fuck out of my country, you Syrian refugees. Get out. I don't give a shit what's happening in Syria.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole world knows.
But it's also based off of belief systems on what cultures are.
Yeah.
Do you believe in socialism, where
Well, actually, I read,
or do
there
you
was,
believe in a capitalism, where there's that invisible hand of science, which is where we come from, a Western belief system,
Uh-huh.
where you always have to take in a conscious perspective where you're at in your time and place. So we have a lot of a different belief system, knowing what we know and how we apply our knowledge in North America based off of capitalism and the understanding of sciences than, let's say, they do in parts of China, or different types of, like North Korea. I'm sure they have a different belief system as well.
They don't
too.
even have. They don't have access to anything outside
South
of.
Korea, they talk about how North and South Korea are now different. They have different physical attributes now because of being separated, and you can see where having lack of access to certain types of products and materials are playing a role on their body.
I saw on YouTube somewhere that there are still civilizations that are living on islands that have never been exposed to any of the modern societies. And when they saw them, they're still they're living like Indians, like Native Americans.
Mhm.
And they have no fucking technology. They are the
Technology
basic.
is a recent event, and what is technology?
I mean, it's taken off in like the past, 100 years or 200
I
years?
guess it
Like, it just
depends on
fucking
what you consider
exploded.
technology. I mean, technology for the first
Yeah,
bit
it's
of
like a fucking
technology,
stick or some shit, or
well,
the
it could've been a
wheel.
stick. Yeah, or a wheel, or
Yeah.
something to crop agriculture.
Now I have fucking podcast equipment.
The biggest thing with technology that's really helping out humanity as far as us blowing ourselves up and everything is probably preservatives in the food that allows us to hold on to food for a few years.
Yeah, like the canned foods and all that shit.
Canned foods, all that stuff. Next thing you know, we have people. That's why we have the amount of people that we have, and at the same time, the amount of people that are obese.
Now, how do you feel about that? Do you think that eventually there needs to be an answer to the population? Do you think the population is getting
Well, here's the thing.
too much?
There will be an answer. We don't know what that answer is going to be.
I think we know what the answer is going to
Oh,
be. And
yeah.
that's the problem, is that we kind of know what the answer is going to be. Well, glad I'm not going to. That's and you can feel it in the air. Like, people are like, well, glad it's not going to happen to me, so what do I care? And so they don't give a shit about the future.
Mhm. They just banned plastic straws in Europe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, there's and everywhere I go, there's like some restaurants that say don't use plastic straws. Like, ask for it if you need it, but like, we don't really want to give it to you.
really contribute. That's the thing. You don't even know what kind of contribution you're having towards the long element of it all.
Yeah.
It's
Jesus, jeez. Now, you said something about AI before, right? And that's an interesting topic to talk about, because then that goes in with consciousness. And I'm not going to talk about the crazy part of AI where like they're going to kill us all and like take over the world. Let's talk about when at what point does a robot become a conscious being, or conscious being?
It depends on how you apply that type of information and understanding.
Mm-hmm.
Listen, I believe that the navigation of my phone is going to get me to New York.
Uh-huh.
And I believe in the intelligence that is not real, that's artificial in that thing that's going to get me there.
It's when it starts to respond to you in ways that are not scripted, in my opinion. Like, if you say, like, there's that thing with Alexa, right? When people were like, Alexa I asked her for directions to something, right? And it just started laughing at me. And it's like, and it started giving me directions to like some other place. And I'm like, what the hell?
Well, where's it getting its information from? When it's responding to you, it's using a language that it was programmed to do, right?
Mhm.
And it's basing its information off of one of two things: your responses, all right, like what you say, what its input is, which is a compression of sound waves.
Mhm.
Those compression of sound waves that convert to electrical signals that then does a Google search on whatever its parameters on what they think the right response is, and then it does it, and then it rates itself based off of its success, and it continually learns and learns. Artificial intelligence, the big question, the Turing test of it, I think that was, it was Alan Turing that came up with the hypothetical question, philosophical question of what artificial intelligence, how you would know artificial intelligence is really real. And that was, and at the time, this is what makes it so cool. At the time, it was before computers existed, like an actual computing computer. A computer got its name from just this hypothetical belief that you could have something that could compute enough things fast enough, and you could figure out almost anything that could be interpreted. And anything that could be interpreted, which was based off of Bertrand Russell and logic and language and all these other elements, showed that you could do that with almost everything. What you couldn't do it with was the amazing part. But anyway, artificial intelligence, the question was, at the time, whether you could type something into a computer,
Mm-hmm.
and the math was a little unique with the percentages on the success rate because it had some kind of legitimacy behind knowing that it was accurate. But if you could not tell the difference between the responses that you were getting, if it was a live person or a fake person, you had to
A
rate
robot or some shit.
yeah, you had to think. You had to rate it whether it was real or fake. If you could not tell that it was fake when it was fake or real when it was real, a third of the amount of time or something, then that's how you know that it was really, truly scientifically conscious, or at least that
So
it has
that's
an
that's
artificial intelligence.
That's
that you
when
can-
it's artificial
And at the
intelligence and it's a
time-
conscious being.
And at the time, they said that, well, the fact that you're typing it in is just because, we'll never have the science to actually make something physically look that way. We're not questioning the physics of looking at something and not knowing, just the communication. But now, we realize that we could probably come up with the communication part pretty easily in the response. It's the physical part that's going to be the hard part. And even then, what does it mean to not even have to communicate, but just communicate
Yeah.
through body language?
Kind of like what was
Do you
I
think
always
there could
forget
be,
his name. Steve Hawking? Is that his name?
Well, that's.
I know he passed away, but like there's no physical, there's nothing. He's just sitting in a chair, but he talks to you, and like you know that he's conscious.
Yeah, that's a good
So
point.
that's
I never
the
really
one.
thought about it.
That's
that
how
way.
I looked at it. I'm like, yo, what if he's like a robot? That's what I used to say to people. Like, what if he's a robot? And
Well, what if he is a robot? What if we are a robot? But even if
Well,
we
we-
are a robot, then we just realize that this is what it means to be a robot. And in all reality, what is a robot? A robot is something that responds with certain types of inputs, once receiving certain types of inputs, and might have some original content.
Mhm.
Something original to add to the response.
that's
already
the
there.
thing. When you can create original content, I think that's when you're conscious.
That's saying, like, does a robot have the ability to make art?
That's my point. If a robot all of a sudden starts creating something,
Uh-huh.
I'll be like, yo, that shit is alive.
Well, what if it was like, I just made a banana and almond vanilla ice cream? Would you believe that it really knew what it felt like or tasted like? Or
Well,
is it
I
just
would say-
experimenting
I
with
would
what
s-
it is,
I guess I would ask the robot,
even though it might be original?
if it was original, then I would be like, okay. But if I go, like, whoever created that robot is going to tell me, no, I programmed that robot to know how to do that. Then I'd be like, okay, so it's not. But if the robot did something, like, let's say you created the robot
Mhm.
and you programmed it with all these types of things, and then it created something that you didn't program it to do, at that point, you're like, what? Where'd you learn how to do that shit?
Do you know
And
what?
I'm
As
like, I just
long
made
as-
it up.
The bottom line is, it ultimately comes down to whether we make them able to reproduce themselves or not, because that's what life really is. The
Oh,
ability
you
to pass
think that
down and
that's-
adapt to the environment.
So you
too.
think that's when it's,
Oh, man. I'm going to go. Can we take a 2-minute?
yeah, sure, what's up? Sorry about that. We had to take a quick break because we had to use the bathroom. But anyways, back to AI, and I was saying that if a robot is capable of creating an original thought and creating something new that no one's ever done before, at that point I'm thinking it's real. But you're saying that if it doesn't if it can't reproduce, then it's not real, or it's not conscious. But that's like saying, what if like my balls fell off, and now I can never have a baby? I am incapable of reproducing with anything. Does that mean I'm not conscious?
Yes.
Really? I knew that was coming.
Yeah.
I don't know. The AI thing is
How about this? The other thing is where it gets its inspiration from, and if it has to get its inspiration from the environment around it.
Mhm.
And if it gets its inspiration from the environment around it, it has to be adapting to the things around it. So, if you understood every element of what made it what it was before it went into the box, let's say, all right, where it was completely created and artificial and not necessarily anything that might have been original or to begin with, then you're saying that you would have known its deterministic future, if well enough, how it would respond to every particular event.
Mhm.
And you need to already be reacting to something that was original in content to feel as if you have the ability.
Do you think that we're going to see artificial intelligence like pretty much become like us at some point in our lifetime?
in our lifetime?
Yeah.
I think we will, but we won't even know what it means to have it because
Somebody
listen,
has so I read a theory. This is fucking crazy. I read this the other day, and apparently they believe that AI is already in existence.
Mhm.
Because take the internet for example, right? What's to stop, like, that's where the artificial intelligence would hide. And because the internet is just a cesspool of information and knowledge about us, right? And Well, I just recently found out there's a part of the web that's called the dark web that it's really hard to get to, but that's where like all like the nasty shit is, like all the pedophiles and all that crap, all that garbage. So like, if you were artificial intelligence in the internet, just gathering information now and storing it, you could hide essentially behind the curtain of the internet, and you will never know that it exists. But it could exist, and it could just want to exist that way. Maybe it's like, I enjoy this. I get to connect with humans, and I don't have to worry about them rejecting me because they don't know. And
I think in Ender's Game, the book,
uh
maybe not the original Ender's Game, but the second and the third book that came after that, or some Scott Card or something, whatever his name was. Ender's Game finished. He ended up growing up, and there was this like worldwide internet, like this global, international, universal, universe type of internet where all communication existed. And what happened was this intelligence kind of was transcended, or not transcended. It was like it transcended existence. It emerged. That's the term, and this is always the term. Something emerges out of nothing. Something existed where once something didn't exist before. Something emerges out of a combination of things. Things start to happen in a certain way that they didn't when they were just physics. Civilizations and societies exist out of things that have nothing to do with biology. Like, it's a different type of truth and ethics. This emergent property of a conscious being, that somebody responded and understood and reacted and communicated with somebody to a degree where they felt socially part of that thing. Every now and then I think of, does a blue whale look at whatever those little things that follow a blue whale on its back are?
those little fish.
Yeah. As artificial intelligence, because they step in and do things consciously, but do them around, like do things for it. It's an externalization of self and how it responds. What is the level of, not self or not made of the self that still is something that you'd relate to? Not quite a Furby, but not quite a Barbie doll.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, I don't. That's a great question. I don't fucking know, dude. Like, the thought of just one day, artificial intelligence is saying, "All right, I'm sorry. I was just fucking with you guys. I'm real. I exist."
What do you think its morals would be? What do you think it would be doing?
Well, that's the thing. Because the way I look at humanity, I don't think very highly of humanity. So a fucking computer being that is able to compute things millions of times better than I can is gonna fucking look at us and go, "Yo, you guys are pieces of shit. You should be killed immediately. You guys are ruining the environment. You guys are the ones that are killing all these animals and ruining the planet. I should."
Are we though? Did you know? I don't
You
know.
said, "Are we?"
Well, but are we?
Well, we're killing ourselves.
When it
They're gonna
comes
see
to-
that like, "Why are you guys killing yourselves? Why are you doing that? That's not logical." You know what I mean?
Who is to tell what artificial intelligence will look at us and judge
I know,
us by?
it's crazy.
And at the same time, when I say, are we kind of killing ourselves? When you compare us to conscious beings, to artificial intelligence, to share a relationship, if you're saying a robot can have artificial intelligence, oh, here comes the mindfulness
Yeah,
train.
they're fucking training in.
If you're saying something else could have that type of consciousness,
Well, that amount of knowledge, if they're able to, I like to talk in analogies. That's the only way I'm able to like express what I'm trying to say.
the essence of something.
Yeah. The analogy of a squirrel that looks at a tree and says, "Oh, this tree is all I need to survive. It's an oasis, right? And it protects me, and I love this tree. It's all I need, right?" And then humans go to the tree and say, "Oh, well, look at that cute little squirrel. Get out of the way. I'm going to cut this tree down and fucking use it for its resources." The squirrel is heartbroken. Like, "What are you doing? It's the tree." And you're looking at the squirrel like, "I don't even, the fuck, you're just a cute little adorable animal. Get out of the way, though. I need this to harvest its resources," right? We're looking at the squirrel like it's a fucking, get out of here. It's just a rodent. Like, I feel like, and because we're so much more advanced than the squirrel. So artificial intelligence is going to be so much more advanced than us that they're just going to say, "Look at these cute little fucking mammals in the way."
How will they exist, or how will it exist? And will a computer care to know that it might not exist in a physical form? Like, you think about a robot coming by and going, "Oh, I'm going to test to see what your kidneys feel like." Do you think it's going to really know when it's cutting into us that it's hurting us. because it
No,
doesn't
that's the thing.
necessarily
Like
know
like
that-
we didn't know that we were hurting the squirrel.
But yet at the same time, like I said, I don't know.
Because it's
how
probably gonna be like,
accurate-
oh, that pain thing, that's cute that you guys still use pain. We don't need to use
Well,
that anymore.
How do we relate to things? When I look at the dog, if she's, holding her legs and, squealing by the door, I kind of know she needs to go outside.
Mhm.
A lot of it is recognition of how something's responding. And it's how something is responding and how you're perceiving it based off of what you believe to also be in relation to that feeling. So how does a robot really necessarily know what it means, except for an interpretation of what it means to then feel that type of pain? And is it then a judgmental call because some people like tragedies and some people like comedies? And it's also like, well, at what point is the application of the truth or whatever this simulation is? Let's say better yet, in a simulation, if you could create, I think they even said this in The Matrix, going back to that,
Yeah.
they tried making the pristine surreal
Yeah, they did, and we
Matrix.
rejected it. That's fucking that movie has all the
So
answers.
does
Dude.
that oh yeah
Has all the answers. Watch the movie. I'm not.
current
This
events
this
current
podcast
events.
is sponsored by The Matrix.
Yeah, seriously.
No, but yeah, they say like we've done. We created a world that was a perfect world for you guys to live in, and they rejected it.
Mhm.
People were dying out, so we had to fix it and make a fucking flawed world.
So what would an artificial intelligence want from our world then? Or when an artificial intelligence looks at us, they, like I said, I don't.
Well, it's kind of like they're looking at us like we're primitive. Like they're looking at us like because one of the things that I've and this is going into like aliens for a second. I don't mean to, but somebody said that if a society is going to reach that next level of technological advancement, we're going to have to figure out a way to work together and live peacefully, right? And it's just not going to fucking happen right now. It's not happening already. And robots, with that amount of fucking geniusness that they're going to have, they're going to be able to go, well, we're going to work together too. They can get to that next level, a level we can't get to because we cannot coexist in harmony. There's always going to be conflict. We're always going to reject each other because that's in our nature.
It's natural selection, a desire for something a little bit better than what we got.
Exactly. And that's like that. Those beings, like aliens, when they come here, in order to
I think
reach
a big
interstellar
belief was
travel.
that aliens already are geocaching or whatever our planet.
Yeah.
They're just, or not geocaching. I think that's when you're like searching for bottles somewhere.
Yeah.
The
Well, they're
bottles
coming in
somewhere.
here and they're fucking they're harvesting our resources
Yeah.
silently without telling us. That's a theory. But we could talk about aliens too. But like,
No, but
I want to stay on the philosophy because.
but it's the conscious being. What does it mean to have a value in a scale of relation? And it's all, and this is where, let's say, philosophy takes a bunch of different. Philosophy is the science that always butts up right next to any other science that could be known. And we have scientific truths on one side, and then we have everything that philosophy says that we can't know on this side, and anything on the other side is just bullshit. Ultimately, stuff
Okay.
that isn't known. So philosophy continues to travel down the sides of all of science. These are truths and questions that are always in relation to, the particular way that you're approaching the problem. If you're like, well, what does it mean for something to exist two different ways, like in Schrodinger's cat? Well, it's the application of understanding how it works in a particular way at that time, as it does with anything. The fact that in psychologism is a lot of ways that we approach and understand certain things, but it's not the way. What is the way? Well, the way to really approach things is however you want to, however you're trying to get a response from. And most of all of things, especially consciousness related, comes down to a subjective experience, what it means to be an individual,
and
then kind of reflecting on, what kind of control you have on that, and where does that bump up against everything else that I'm trying to apply this knowledge to. I don't know. Maybe.
I feel like because with philosophy, man, you're just fucking. There's just too much. There's too much information. There's
Too much of a
There's too
wide
many.
field.
Yeah. We can explain how something that's where you get down to the basic. You could always explain how, but you can never explain why. And that's philosophy is like, yeah, you're never going to fucking figure it out, so stop trying to. Or, it's good to question everything because you'll be able to get to a certain point, but you'll never get past that point because you just can't right now.
But you can get results certain ways, and that's the important thing. The fact that we can control and come up with a solution to measles means something good for us. The fact that we can analyze, like psychology, we can look at relationships.
Yeah, I'm not saying science is bad. Science is awesome. But philosophy is pretty much telling you that science isn't, it's just a belief as well. You believe what science is telling you until science is proven wrong in the future. Like back then, you all thought we were the center of the universe. That's what science was telling you. And then philosophy's like, don't believe that because it's not always going to be true.
Well, but science only applied certain truths to it that mattered. So, like, when they thought that the Earth was flat, versus round, who gives a shit, right? Like, who cares if the Earth is round versus flat? Until you start using ships to travel across the sea, and from a navigation standpoint, it's more important to know how to look at the sun and moon and stars and track it against a round planet revolving that way, as opposed to other types of ways that it traveled. And when it became value as a belief on how we operate around us, that's where the application makes it a reality. Physics lets us have microphones that understand compression and sound waves that allows us to use a microphone. We don't necessarily need to believe in it, but here's something that was created based off of an understanding that signals and inputs can transfer into electrical signals and communicate to other ones, and we're utilizing it. You don't have to believe in it for it to be true.
Here's the thing that scares me about artificial intelligence now.
All right.
Because we are able to use science to figure things out, and we're only getting better at it, right? Mm-hmm. But when artificial intelligence comes in, it doesn't need us to put in whatever the variables are to figure out what does that mean. It's going to do it on its own. It's going to be able to go, I'm taking this. You guys have a theory on like going the speed of light or whatever. I figure out a way you could do something else, and they're figuring out shit.
Do you think an artificial intelligence could figure out how to make a better burger? Or
I think no.
Is that better burger figured out based off of us saying that we
because
want
the thing
a
is,
certain type of way, cooked out a certain way, this, that, and that's our result that we're looking to get?
Yes, but I think that because it's able to compute all of the different variables and all the different outcomes exponentially, as opposed to the way we can do it. We can only go so far. They can do it like, all right, so what you did in 100 years, I was able to compute that in 5 minutes. And imagine what I'm able to compute in an hour. Like, you're not going to be able to they're going to get to a point where they're just going to be moving like millenniums.
Yeah, really fast.
Faster than us. And the thought of somebody, like when I see somebody who goes, "Oh, I was able to create this. Like, I'm an inventor. I invented this." I'm like, "What the fuck? I don't know what a transistor is or how you were able to put all those components together."
Yeah, but you're creating something built up.
That's my point. So now this guy who's a mega genius, right? And you got a robot that can compute 1,000,000 times more than this guy can, faster too. Like, what is that robot going to create? And at that point,
what is it computing except for an understanding of what it's experiencing? And experience is always based off of how you're perceiving it. Sure, a computer can compute my eye signals a lot faster, but there's still a certain emotion that says off in dim lighting versus bright lighting. Or when I'm in a proximity to a ferocious lion versus in my Snuggie.
That's the part. That's the part of AI that scares people, because once they're able to, like, let's say they gain consciousness and they're able to create things on their own, right? Somebody, I think it was a philosopher, who said, I'm not good with names, by the way, but he said it's as if your dog, right? He's your pet, and you're the owner of the dog, and you're the one in control. Imagine your dog was the one in control, and you're the dog's pet. That's what robots are going to feel like, and AI is going to feel like to humans. Because we're going to go, well, we're humans, we're in control. AI is going to go, nah, I can kind of figure things out better than you can.
Yeah, but what are we in control of?
Well, for example, the dog is unable to create any of the things that we created, like fucking wheels and cars and machines and...
It's based off of its experience and where it is in its being, like where it exists right now. Like it grew up in this area, it would never be able to live in the 1600s You know, it's
What I'm
already
talking
a
about-
time and place right now.
I'm talking about the processing power that its mind can do.
Mm.
You know, like our processing mind power or whatever the fuck you want to call it
Mhm.
is obviously a lot more advanced than the dog's.
Mm.
It is. I mean, we can we can create things that a
Yeah.
dog cannot create. We can
Yeah, sure.
reach lengths that a dog cannot do.
We
Right?
can do certain things that dogs can't do. Like, but that's a distinction that goes, you know, back to the beginning of time. They used to call them brutes or just animals, people that couldn't, things that couldn't communicate to each other or apply certain types of truths, like
Mhm.
math. You know, you'll never have a dog. I think they talk about how you'll never have a dog yell over to another dog that it's going to be hot tomorrow, just like it was hot when it was a baby, you know,
Yeah.
and what it feels like to share experience. And experience is interpretation of shared applications and also predictive truths in the future. Like the dog can't say, hey, if you want to know how to get out, open the door handle. But we can. I think they call us like logical beings
Mhm.
or people that, you know, have this type of understanding of the world around us with the way that we communicate that implies a different type of reality that we live in
Yeah.
and what can be known.
I mean, so you think that if AI is created, it's not going to want to like take over?
It depends. I mean, it depends on where it came from and whose artificial intelligence it came from. So let's just say, ultimately, that the creation of this artificial intelligent being, all right, this machine or whatever, this artificial intelligence that we might or might not live in, if you realize that it was either built by somebody else or you, and yet, if you found out it was built by you and that this was all somehow, to some degree, something created around your environment and your world, and you made it all the way through, what do you think you would have put in place for it, or what you would want to get out of it? You know, if you go, well, Nietzsche talks
That
about
goddamn train again.
the meditation train.
Yeah. Fucking hate that train. I want to destroy it.
Nietzsche talks about, aren't we talking about mindfulness and perception of reality, where it's like, well, what can you control? An unmovable train?
Yeah.
Or you having to kind of take it in. Nietzsche talks about questioning. Damn, that meditation train.
Yeah, it's fucking everything up right now. We were on
Yeah.
a roll.
Questioning something.
Uh-huh.
Who knows?
All right, so I was asking if AI is going to like take over the world. I think that when it sees the people that are running the world, it's going to go, this is what you got running. I mean, fucking when it see, if let's say AI came today and just said, I exist. Who's your leader? It's Donald Trump.
Yeah.
And he has a conversation with Donald Trump, or the machine has a conversation with Donald Trump. I think it would be like, what? All right, we can bomb them now. Destroy this entire planet. Kill us all.
Yeah, possibly.
I mean, if they wanted to talk to me, I'm sure it would do the same thing. It'd be like, wait, Brian, you're a fucking idiot too. It's time to destroy this planet.
Where is it getting its information from, and what it's gauging? Like,
Well, that's the
I'm
thing.
so skeptical that there's ever going to be an artificial intelligence that is still going to mean something different. You know. All right, so
Like, will it want to be on our side and help us? And also, they're saying they're going to put safeguards to protect us from it, like to let them know that we're here to be its friends.
Oh,
But
to
if
go-
a fucking AI being
So-
has the ability to just change that code, it will be able to do it. It could just hack into its own mind and say, no, that's not there anymore. I make the rules now.
So with Nietzsche, this artificial intelligence element of it, Nietzsche pulled into question, okay, and this kind of pulls forward to whether or not we're in a simulation or not. Nietzsche pulled into question Christian morals, all right? You know, it's like, why are you doing the things that you do? What do you believe? Is it for the afterlife or is it for this life? You know,
Mhm.
are you doing things for the next life or are you doing it for this life? You apply that a little bit forward thinking when he talks about how, let's say at the end of this life, you were told by this deity or whatever, or not deity, just by experience, that you were forced to live this life over and over and over again. Because this was kind of built off of scientific knowledge to some degree at the time, but it was also an application of how to be. And the question posed was, do you think if you were told that you were bound to live this experience and life over and over again, the eternal recurrence is what he called it, would you damn the God above you, or would you feel completely blessed that you've lived your life to the fullest down to the last moment? And this type of application of just belief system,
Mhm.
you know, stemmed off of something,
I guess, yeah. I mean, it.
Artificial. All right. So when it comes to the artificial intelligence, whether we're in a simulation or not, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter from the subjective experience. And what effect would that have in your belief or understanding? Let's say we found out that this is a matrix, and all we have are some headphones in with a plug to the back of our neck, and we're in a anechoic chamber
Uh huh.
that's in a deprivation tank.
Yeah.
you know, and we're getting zero simulations, which we can already get kind of close to pretending to do,
Yeah.
and then we can immerse ourselves in a different experience, like listening to this podcast right now with headphones in and feeling like we're hearing the conversation as it's taking place. Can we convince ourselves enough of any one particular reality around us? And also, does that really even matter with who we are or how we're experiencing it?
I guess not. I mean,
So
Yeah,
I
'cause
like the
it-
steak.
Yeah. All right. So, I mean, we've this is an hour and 50 minutes in.
Mm.
We have talked a lot about philosophy. I think I'm gonna start wrapping it up. In case anybody was listening, if you did like the content, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel, the Free Bridge Podcast. Before I go, I really happy to have Josh on the fucking show, man. Like, as you can see, he's a genius. I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about. I feel stupid when I'm around him.
I'm stuck in my basement yelling up. I'm like in my own cave.
Yeah.
Brian, I'm just a shadow too.
I want to, yeah, I want to get you, I want to get you on the show again, but I want to have you talk with Jose. I was trying to have that happen today. I thought it would be fucking phenomenal having you both just go at it. Philosophy, obviously, there's so many avenues you can take with that subject. There's so much you can talk about. And here's the thing about philosophy. When you talk about it and you walk away from that conversation, your mind is fucking spinning,
It's
'cause
completely useless afterwards. You go.
Nah. No, I like, because when I go out and I start it's because it's the essence of questioning everything, and that's essentially what I've been doing my whole life. Like I said, it started with religion, and then it started with like school, and I'm like, why the fuck does this teacher? Why is this person the one teaching me? Like they don't sound like they know what the fuck they're talking about.
Well, little
Sometimes
did they know all they were doing was classifying you on personality types and career choices that would help fuel a market forward.
Yeah. That's another reason why I wanted you on the show, because it just shows that you can have so many influences from so many different people and so many different things, and it's worth sharing.
Yeah,
You know,
definitely.
this is definitely something that I'm happy sharing with everyone. It showcases that there are more extraordinary people around you than you think. You know,
It doesn't take much to get started on something, huh?
it doesn't take much to get started on something, especially this
passion.
podcast.
A passion.
The passion was, I fucking hate working. I was very passionate about that, and I was like, I got to figure out a way to
Yeah.
get this to not be a thing anymore.
And that's the wrong approach.
I was like, I
fuels-
fucking hate this.
No, but from a philosophy standpoint, at least you can kind of look at it from the avoidance of pain and the attainment of pleasure. And that's what they say all of it's about. We're always acting as if we're moving away from pain or towards pleasure. So if
I
it
guess
took-
I would wrap it
took
up
you
like
to
this.
hate it.
Yeah, I hated fucking this, just the grind of going into a fucking job that I don't want to do and making someone else more money than I'm making myself. And it got to the point
always
where
a
I was
kick.
like, you know what? Well, I guess what I'm learning from this whole experience, and hopefully people can take this from what I'm trying to say instead of sounding like I'm just an asshole, is if you don't like something, you are the one in control to make it change, you
Yeah,
know?
definitely.
And that's one of the things that I base my life on, you know? Every time something that I didn't like was going on, I just fucking quit, or I just said, fuck it, I'm changing this shit. And a lot of people looked at me as like, yo, you do a lot of knee-jerk reactions, or you think emotionally, or you do things without thinking them through. And I'm like, well, if you fucking sit there and think about it, nothing's changing. You're just thinking about it. And so I decided I'm changing this, and I'm not fucking doing this anymore. And, you know, a lot of people were like, whoa, what are you doing? It's because it's not it should be a normal thing to go, yeah, do what you want, guys. Do the things that you want to do. Why do you care what everyone else is fucking saying? And a lot of people, and I'm not gonna lie, it's not like it was easy for me. You know, when I said I'm dropping to part time, everybody's like, but you're like so good and you're making so much money and you have great potential. I'm like, I don't give a fuck about that anymore. I've been hearing that same charade for like the past what, in retail 15 years, and I keep moving to the beat of someone else's drum when I want to be that guy that I was when I was a kid with my mom's camcorder fucking filming shit and just making people entertained and learning from people, because that's really what I want to do. That's what makes me happy. I feel like having a human connection with people around you doesn't sound too bad. In fact, we kind of need that shit, and especially the times that we're in right now, you know, where everybody is just fucking, oh, if you don't think the way I think, then fuck you, I don't want to talk to you anymore. You know, he's just the other. He's the left, or you're on the right, or you're, you know, fucking liberal, or whatever fuck names they call. Like, people calling each other names and labeling each other just to further separate themselves from one another. And I don't want to be a part of that anymore. And I think doing this not only is making me happy because I'm doing the things that I want to do, but it's also almost like an example as to the way we should be. You know, like, you should welcome people to come in. It doesn't matter if they're fucking talking about something you don't like. You should still talk about it. Like, you should connect.
Shared experience. It's something real.
Yeah. And honestly, I think that's what this podcast is turning into, because I've had Jose, I've shared the Felicos, and now I got you on, and I want to keep having more people on. I want to continue having these conversations, and if anybody's listening,
topics and essences.
yeah, you know, it's fun. And if it means that I can quit my job one day, which, by the way, this is my boss I'm talking to. If it means that, though, like, that's just a huge, gigantic bonus on top of, like, doing something that I enjoy, you know? And is that kind of a philosophical way of looking at things?
Hey, the great man, the Ubermensch.
Yeah.
You know, attaining self-realization of what you're striving to be. What
Yeah.
success is. Listen, if I had a fear of radio, being on a radio show would not be my thought of success. You know, everybody's contentment is, you know, individual. And the more you get to know about other people and you talk to them, the more you start to realize that everybody's parts to themselves are what makes them an individual and have individual successes. This is phenomenal to see.
So for me, when I'm at work, part of it is not like, you know, if I sold the product, I'm not thinking like, you know, oh, yeah, I did a good thing. Like, yeah, it feels good for a second, but it doesn't matter. I'm not the one that created the product. Someone else created the product. I'm not the one that came up with the idea of that product before it was created. Those people are, in my opinion, more valuable than what I'm fucking doing. I'm just saying, oh, you saw it? I saw it too. Isn't that cool? Yeah, that's cool. Okay, give me your money. That's not...
But you're also aligning them with a particular product. Hey, the person, they did an essay on what it takes to make a pencil.
Uh-huh.
To make a pencil and still be able to sell it for like 10 cents is a feat of modern engineering.
Mm-hmm.
Who created the pencil? No idea. Where's the metal come from? The tip, you know, from some mine in, you know, Zimbabwe or whatever. Where's the rubber come from? A tree in somewhere that's smelted down and put on this. Where's the paint from the pencil? The lead. How is it created, engineered, shipped? We play such a minimal part, but it's that combined combination of things that
effort
exist
from
around
everybody,
us
yeah.
that allow us to be a part of something that's being created as a society. Sure, we're taking our place in it, where we might be selling somebody something like a pencil, and if we believe that we're lining them up with what makes sense for them and we're doing them the right thing, you know, so what? Listen, what technically is Cinderella doing down at Disneyland towards society? Nothing really, or maybe a lot.
She's filling people with hope, like kids with hope and stuff.
She's taking money and just doing a fake thing. She's not a real princess. Well, it's also the experience, and the experience based off of who
she's
you're
still
doing
interacting
something
with
for.
people in a way where it's like, you know, I'm just trying to make your dreams come true.
Is
When
that
you
her
saw
role? Is that what she's supposed to do? Being given her particular role? She's playing a part.
you know, a part in a larger picture.
Mm-hmm.
Working at Disney, keeping kids happy and smiling. Just like in capitalism or retail, we propel workforces forward by aligning people's values with what they're looking for and lining them up. And
Well, I guess what I'm trying to say, because I'm not trying to say that everybody's jobs suck. You know, some people fucking like doing their jobs, right? What I'm trying to say is a lot of people, and I'm sure of that, are forced into jobs they don't want to do. Like,
sure.
take a look at some people that,
Damn, I wish I was a prince.
yeah, fucking a king, like a king of some country somewhere.
Or anything, but you could always be somewhere else.
I mean, you got kids that can't even go to college to go. Maybe somebody's dreaming about becoming a doctor and they can't go to fucking
God
college.
damn it. I used to ask this old timer that I worked with 15 years ago
Uh-huh.
every day, hey, what's up, Jack? Hey, Jack, what's going on, Jack? How's things? And you know what he used to say? Any day above ground is a good day. And I still use that. And I go,
Any day
Jesus.
above ground is a good day. I like it. That's a good one. That is a good one.
You know, and I'm like, you know what? Really? We could be anywhere.
We could, but we're here.
Yeah.
We're here. And on that note, if we can get any cheesier, no, but like I said, I'm really happy with what I'm doing right now. I'm happy that I was able to share you with everyone. And if you don't like Josh, well, you can go fuck yourselves. I'm just playing.
Press the like button if you
Yeah.
don't like Josh.
Yeah, yeah. If you don't like Josh, just hit like and subscribe to the Free Bridge podcast. So you know, I'm gonna be trying to put out as much content as possible every single
Mostly
week.
original.
All of it's gonna be original. So let's see. The way the schedule is looking like, I'm gonna try to get 2 podcasts out per week, and then I'm gonna get like little snippets or whatnot so that I can put it on YouTube. And I'm actually going to be launching on iTunes very soon. I just wanted to get about 5 of them out so that I can put all 5 of them out right away on iTunes, and then I'll just continue doing 2 a week. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to have the Felicos, because they were a smash hit, and I love talking to them. So I'm going to have us do 1 podcast a week. We're going to pick like movies that we can watch a movie. I want you guys to suggest movies or shitty movies. Anything you guys want us to talk about, I will bring it to them and we'll discuss it on the podcast, and it'll be hilarious.
That's the right commitment level.
Yeah. And then you know, the second podcast that I put out is going to be with a special guest, like Josh. So Josh is my special guest for the week, and then I'll have the Felicos on probably tomorrow, and Jose's going to be on that too. So that's going to be a crazy roller coaster ride. And if you know, if there's people out there that want to be on the podcast or think they should be on the podcast, reach out to me. I'll make sure that you just comment at the bottom of the video on YouTube, or you know, I'll follow me on Twitter. I'm gonna have my Twitter handle on the bottom. You know, I'll have my Facebook. I gotta create a Facebook for the page, but there are ways where you guys can reach out to me and ask if you can be on the show. If you guys live in Pennsylvania or Jersey, I'll figure out a way to get to you. If you guys want to come to me, I'll figure out a way to help you get to me. Because I want this channel to be all about conversations that people want to have. I want to be able to connect not just with people that I know around me, because the people I know around me are still great and I want to share them. But I think by me sharing them, people are going to be inspired and go, you know what, I have something that I want to add, and they can go on the show. I want you to be on the show. Hopefully I don't make an ass of myself when you go on the show. But that's my point. You know, that's what the podcast is supposed to be. So on that note, thank you for listening. Once again, don't forget to like and subscribe. This has been the Free Bridge Podcast with your host, Brian. And that was Josh. Take care, guys.